Happy Wednesday, veterans. Thanks for joining in.
Yes, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. It's a little rainy and gloomy here, but trying to bring the sunshine.
Right. Well, every time I see you, it's like the sun is shining. So happy
Yeah.
to be here with you today. So, real quick, welcome all the vets that are coming in. If you have a moment, go ahead and jump in the chat there and share where you're calling from or where you're signing in from, branch that you served, years that you served. Love to hear from you. Right.
Roberta Watson says she's here and ready.
Right on. We've been waiting for you, Roberta. Glad you're here. So today we're going to be talking about tinnitus and maybe some secondary conditions that could be related to tinnitus, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But go ahead and keep letting us know where you're from. Glad to see all the names here. Don Michaud, I think I worked with Don not too long ago. Good to see you here, sir.
We got Mark Powell from Florida. Thanks for being here.
Lots of people. Let me see the Army people. Go ahead and post your branch, your location. Let us know what you did.
Give everybody some time to get in before we jump into the topic.
Wow. Yeah. Heck yeah. John Matchler. I worked with John as well. Hey, John. So, Cass, how has your week been going?
Going fast. Honestly, I feel like the start of the year, it's been going fast. I can't believe it's already almost mid-February.
Right. Yeah.
What about you?
For sure. For sure. Same. We are, geez, it is Wednesday already. Craziness. All right. So I assume that a lot of people coming in today have been dealing with tinnitus, or maybe wondering what tinnitus is and what things might be a secondary condition to tinnitus. And again, we'll get into that here in just a few minutes. But we want to give everybody a chance to get signed in, get settled in, grab you a beverage, and enjoy the show here. So we got a couple more minutes here, and then we got a quick disclaimer to go over. Rick Dowdy, how you doing, my friend? See Rick in our coffee with the coaches all the time. Good to see you.
It's always a motivator. It's always got a motivating story to tell.
Absolutely.
A lot of Army people popping in since you said that. We got Laddie, Derek. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your service. And before we get into a little bit, we can kind of give you guys a recap about us. You might have seen us in the past or worked with us in the past. But my name's Coach Cassie, and I've worked with the company a little over 2 years now. And again, that's gone just as fast as the past couple of months have. But it's great because we get to work alongside you guys and point you in the right direction. I can't think of anything else that I'd rather be doing.
Man, and you said it best. There's absolutely nothing that I would rather be doing than what we're doing today. So my name's Stacy Allen. I'm a veteran coach manager here, and been with the company for about 4 years, and look forward every day getting up, turning on my computer, and speaking with my brothers and sisters, and seeing how we can get them through this process. I know it's difficult. I've been through the process myself. I was a client here, and just because of the integrity of the company and how easy they made it, I asked to come on board and kind of pay it forward. So that's a little bit about me, and excited to be here today. Excited to, if you haven't figured it out, Cassie is my daughter, and she was watching me work one day and talking with vets, and she's like, "Oh my God, Dad, this is what I want to do." And she's killing it. She's helping veterans every day, and super proud of her. Proud dad moment here. And if you could see him back in the background, that's my other son. That's Sarge back there. But But anyway, I think we're about 5 after the hour. Cass, you want to hit the disclaimer and we'll dive into it.
Yeah, of course. So, firstly, we're not accredited agents, VSOs, attorneys, or any other entity recognized by the Department of Veterans Affairs or the VA, and we're not affiliated with the VA in any way. VA Claims Insider is an education-based coaching and consulting company for disabled veterans exploring eligibility for increased VA disability benefits and who wish to learn more about that process. VA Claims Insider also connects veterans with vetted independent medical professionals in our referral network for medical examinations and independent medical opinions, or IMOs, for a wide range of disability conditions.
Right on. So before we get into the topic of the day, I just want to kind of give a brief overview of VA Claims Insider, what we do and how we do it. So our elite program, what we do is we team you up with a coach, right? And that coach and their assistant will walk you through the process step by step by step. You're never alone in this process. We're going to help you build a strategy. And that's one of the key components of winning your claim is a solid strategy, right? Help you through that claim submission process. And then at the end of the day, we need to make sure that you are well prepared for the CNP examination, and that's the compensation and pension exam that the VA will order for you. So we'll make sure you're well prepared for that, and all of that leads to success at the end of the road. We use our SEM method, strategy, education, and medical evidence. So you have those three things in your back pocket. You really set yourself up for success through this process. So that's VA Claims Insider Elite Program in a nutshell. If you're interested in that, come on board with us. You can go to vaclaimsinsider.com or jump, if you want to work directly with Cassie, you can go to theveterancoach.net, sign up through her link, and you'll be assigned to her, and we'll be happy to get you rolling.
It's always nice to talk to a familiar face. So I'll be happy to kind of look into your guys' situation and chat with you one-on-one and figure out what the next step is going to be.
100%. So what else do they get, Cass, other than the personalized strategy with the coach and walking through the process? You know, we have the live classes that we offer several times a day. You want to talk about those just a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So we're big on education, right? That's that E part of the SEM method that he was talking about. And so anywhere you look in the program, you're going to find something to learn. And a big part of that is the live classes we host. We do these live videos on Facebook, but when you join the program, you can join in for classes about 3 times a day, Monday through Thursday right now. And then we do host just a general coffee with the coaches, open forum hangout Monday through Friday. And really just get to hang out with veterans that are in the program, other coaches that host the classes, and learn something or just be in community with people that care about what you're doing and doing the same thing that you're doing. We do have some specialty classes where we chat a little bit about best preparation for those CNP exams, whether that's going to be on the medical side of things, orthopedic conditions, or for mental health specifically, because it is all about preparation, just understanding your symptoms, being able to talk about them. So that's what we help you understand during those classes.
100%. And if any of you out here have more questions about the program, you've got some specific things that you'd like to ask that we're not answering right now, you can schedule a discovery call with one of our team members and get in depth with any questions that you might have, and they might be able to answer those for you before you actually sign on with us. Z, could we put the discovery call link up here in just a second? Just give everybody the opportunity to schedule. There you go, vaclaims.help. You can schedule that discovery call with one of our team members, and we'd be happy to discuss your claim with you.
And just like it says there, it's a free discovery call, right? It's not going to hurt you any, just to call and ask questions or get your questions answered. We'd really like to partner with you on your VA claims journey, so we're here to help and guide you.
All right. 100%. So let's so we're talking about secondary conditions to tinnitus, but before we dive into those conditions, I think it's important that we talk about tinnitus itself and what tinnitus is, what hearing loss is. I've already seen a couple comments in the chat that I was service connected for hearing loss, but at 0%, and things like that. And we'll touch on that and why that happens. But let's talk about tinnitus. What is tinnitus?
From experience, it's kind of that phantom ringing, humming noise you hear, right? As a coach, I'm not a veteran here, but I've had my own noise trauma that I was exposed to. And that's what caused it for me, is what I'm assuming. I had no other noise exposure to that level. And it's very similar for veterans, right? A lot of veterans have noise exposure during active duty, but nothing to that level after leaving, and definitely not prior to. And that's kind of where that exposure comes from.
So, you kind of described it there. It's a humming or a ringing or a pulsating feeling. Different people have different descriptions of it, but you hit it right on the money when you said it's a phantom noise, because nobody else can hear it, right? They can't hear your tinnitus, right? They might have their own tinnitus. In fact, I was reading an article earlier that about 20% of the population deals with tinnitus at some level. So that was crazy when I read that. 20%, not of the veteran population, 20% of the population, right? And I'm assuming, and this is just my own assumption, that the veteran population incidence of tinnitus is even higher than that because of the high noise levels that a lot of the MOSs deal with, right? All right. So what kind of things, let's talk about the things that tinnitus can cause or may be related to. Um, One of the things is headaches. Tinnitus can actually cause or aggravate, make your headaches worse, in other words, right? You want to go into a little more on that, Cass, about.
Yeah, so I think the key word really is aggravation in that case. When it comes to getting a secondary condition, whether it is migraines or something different to tinnitus, you want to make sure that you have the evidence to support it, right? So if you have migraines, you feel they may be being aggravated by tinnitus and you're already service connected for that, the next step's going to be getting a medical opinion to kind of link those things together. And that's how you'll have success with the service connection.
Right. So headaches. Well, let's go back. So tinnitus. Let's talk about the rating for tinnitus. Okay. So the rating for tinnitus is 10%. If it gets service connected, it's 10%. It's not 20. It's not 30. It's not 0. The only rating for tinnitus is 10%. Right. So that's one thing. Headaches that we're talking about can range anywhere from 0, 10, 30, or even 50% disability rating for headaches, right? So you can have a 10% rating for tinnitus that causes or aggravates headaches that may take you up to 50% or 60% when you add those together, right? So that tinnitus is an important baseline to get service connected if you're dealing with that, because there are many other things that can be service connected to that. And that's what we're talking about today.
And I think it's important to note too that with tinnitus, it's one of the very few claims that it doesn't have a test out there to say, okay, you have tinnitus or you don't have tinnitus. It's very subjective in a lot of cases. And so I think that's just good to understand. You might not have a diagnosis for it, but you may be dealing with it. There just isn't a test to exactly solidify that you have it. So if you feel you're dealing with it, if you hear the ringing or some variation of that, it's probably good to look into seeing if you may have that noise exposure to kind of pair with it.
Okay. So let's talk about the criteria for headaches and the rating criteria for headaches.
So that one a little bit is primarily based on frequency and severity, right? How often are you dealing with these headaches? How severe are they? That's how the rating scale is all based off with the VA. And then to warrant that higher rating, it really does have to be impacting your work life, your economic impact. You know, if you're having to call in, use all of your PTO, and then you don't have any left over, so you're just not getting paid for those days you're taking off. You know, those are important things to think about when you're getting rated for them or going in to talk to somebody about getting rated for them.
Right. And you talked about severity. So the key word that the VA uses is prostrating, right? When we're talking about severity, that's the marker of how bad is your headache. And prostrating simply means you have to lay down, right? It's so bad that you have to lay down. So that's how it's characterized. So let's say that you have one headache every other month or so that is prostrating. So that would equate to a 10% rating. Um, if they average one a month, that rating is right at that 30% marker. And then the 50% marker is two or more a month or more than one. And like you said, it causing a severe economic inadaptability, and that's VA words, right? Severe economic inadaptability, meaning that just like you said, you're missing work and your paychecks are short. Now it's making it difficult for you to pay your bills and so on and so on. So those are the ratings for headaches. The VA uses the term migraines, but all headaches can be rated the same way. It's all based on severity and frequency, like you said. Okay. So we'll pause there just a second and take a look over here. I see a bunch of comments, and I don't want to let those go too far before we hit some of those. Okay, Jim Gormley served from 73 to 76, was a radio operator. You've got a 0% for tinnitus, but you do get funding. Can someone assist me with this? Well, um, yeah, I mean, that's not a whole lot to look at, but we could certainly dive into it after we look at your documentation. And again, Jim, you can go ahead and sign up for that discovery call, speak with one of our business development representatives, or just go ahead and jump on with us. It doesn't cost anything to sign up with VA Claims Insider. We only charge our fees if you win your claim and it results in an increase. Okay, so there is no risk to you to jump on board with us and let us dive into what's going on with you. Great question. You want to hit the next one there, Cass?
Yeah, so there's another question here. Yeah, question/comment from Dawn. Says, I'm still waiting on my migraine secondary to my tinnitus claim. Still under review since October 26th of 2022. Hopefully soon I'll get positive results. So I'm hoping you do as well, Dawn. And if for some reason it doesn't go your way, reach out to us and let us review the letter and kind of figure out what to do next.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Dawn is one of our elite members. So definitely keep that communication line open with your coach. That's important when you're working in the elite program is that communication line. So make sure that you're communicating that with your coach. Good stuff. All right. Richard got 10% for tinnitus, but my hearing loss isn't rated. And I alluded to this earlier in the show. Hearing loss itself is pretty tough to get rated. You almost have to be completely deaf. Okay, it is a very objective test that you go through that the VA rates you with. It's based on the frequencies that you can hear or can't hear, whether or not that's in alignment in both ears, whether you're completely deaf in one ear and can still hear out of the other. So it's very, very difficult to get more than a 0% rating for hearing loss itself. Okay. That said, hearing loss can result in other secondary conditions, and we'll get into that here. And I'll just throw out a little teaser. I mean, if you can't hear, it just stands to reason that you're going to be dealing with a little bit of anxiety. I mean, if you're crossing the street, my anxiety would be going up, right? If you can't hear traffic and things like that. So mental health issues could be related to tinnitus and or hearing loss, right? Okay. So Cass, let's jump into anxiety.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it can go both ways. It can be secondary to either just that constant irritating ringing you have from tinnitus, or like he described, it can be secondary to that hearing loss and just not being able to hear, maybe even just people you're trying to have a conversation with. Over time, those things are going to affect your mood. And similar to the migraines, that aggravation or causation to your mood being affected, causing anxiety, causing depression, or other mental health conditions is a secondary pathway. And that actually has a pretty high chance of being rated anywhere from 0 all the way up to 100%. So I think that's one of the ones as a coach I always look into first. Are you dealing with this? Let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of veterans, especially old school veterans, right? Nah, I'm fine. I don't deal with that and stuck it up and drive on. But I'll tell you what, a lot of veterans deal with at some level mental health issues. Okay, and I'll share myself included. It was when I came to this company as a client that I realized, wow, I am dealing with a few things in the closet, right? And so not only did I go through that and learn a lot more about myself and get the rating and compensation that I did deserve, but I was able to face some of the things that I hadn't faced in years and years. And life is much better now, and you can't put a price on that, right? So I would urge you, if you're dealing or you think you're dealing with some of that stuff, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself and get the help that you need, right? Come see us. We'll talk you through some of this stuff. Okay.
Yeah. I think you get, along with the strategy and education, everything. We call ourselves coaches because we are here to encourage you to go through some of those harder things and then make sure that you have the support you need to get through it on the other end successfully. So you're not going to be going through it alone. I think that's the best part about working with a coach.
All right, Tavarius, you're asking if Meniere's disease is related to tinnitus. That's a great question. We're going to get into that here in just a few more minutes, so stand by on that. And then Valerie's asking, does TMJ cause a ringing or the weird noise that you hear constantly? So one of the things that we will tell you from a coaching standpoint, we are not physicians, we're not doctors. I don't know about this connection. It's possible, but that's something that we could refer you back to your own doctor, or we have a team of medical professionals that we can refer you to get that question answered. And if it does, if TMJ, temporal mandibular joint disorder, can cause that ringing, you can get what's called a nexus letter, and that's what makes that connection. Okay, from the TMJ to tinnitus, for instance. And since I mentioned nexus, Cassie, let's talk about the requirements for a service connection. Okay, some people on here may not even know what a nexus is, right? So there's three things that's required for service connection. What do you think?
So usually, if you're joining in on our classes, you're going to hear us use a specific term, the Kaluza triangle. It's basically what the VA has lined out as what it takes to get service connection. What is their rules? What do you need? And ultimately, it is three things. It's going to start with either an in-service aggravation or event, or in what we're talking about today, an already service-connected condition that might be causing this aggravation to your new condition. And then the second piece is going to be a diagnosis. So if you're dealing with anything before you go and get it rated, you want to have that diagnosis. You want to have talked to a doctor about it. And then the third piece is that nexus. A nexus really is just a link or a medical opinion that's talking about the connection between one condition and another. And when you're doing it for service connection purposes, you want that medical evidence to entail information specifically about how it's service related. That's what's going to help you have success. We do refer to a team of doctors, I think we talked about a little bit earlier, that can help you with that. Or if you need doctors to look through your records and see if you have a connection possibility based on what you're already diagnosed with, we're going to look through that and get you their way if it's necessary.
100%. And this is funny because my next comment I was going to hit is from Jeff Rutter. Jeff said he was denied for headache secondary to tinnitus from an explosion. The denial letter said no medical connection between the two. And that's exactly what we were just talking about. That's the medical nexus. That is the connection. So those three things, if you're missing any of those three things that Cassie had just mentioned, you're not going to be successful in that claim. So that's what we do here. We make sure that you have everything you need to put you in the best position to win your claim. All right. So again, if you're ready to jump on board, I'm going to throw Cassie's link back up there because she's an amazing coach and she will certainly get you through this process. Jump over to theveterancoach.net, get signed up with her, and she will get you moving forward.
Yeah.
For any of you that may, and I'm sorry, Cass, for interrupting, but any of you that may be wondering why I'm not putting my link up there. So I'm one of the managers here, and I work with the coaches to make sure that the vets are in their best place. So I'm not currently working with a client load right now, but Cassie will certainly get you taken care of.
Of course. I'm here to guide you in the right direction, look into all those details and see what we can iron out. I will say before we move on to some of the next secondaries here that Jeff makes a good point. He clearly stated my denial letter said this. And the key point there is read your denial letters, right? You want to throw them away. You want to burn them. You just want to get rid of them because you don't want to read them. They're disappointing. But they tell you exactly what's missing. You're never going to get a decision letter that just says you were denied. That's it. It's always going to say, here's what we were missing. Here's what we have. And so keep that. And when you do get signed up with us, upload it, let your coach look through it, and we'll give you that feedback.
Great point. Great point. All right, let's hit one more comment here before we continue on with the secondaries again. Jerry Kimberlin, elite member. Man, glad you're here, Jerry. Currently 10% for tinnitus, 50% for migraines. Migraines are affecting my vision, lots of downtime as a result. Yeah, so when you're having migraines that bad and that often and can lead to that economic disability, inadaptability, that's why you're at 50%. So glad you're here. Thanks for sharing, Jerry. Appreciate you.
Yeah. And I would encourage you, kind of like we mentioned earlier, if you're having migraines that often and severe, is that impacting your mood or mental health at all? Sometimes that's something you can look at or think about because there are secondary pathways for other conditions too. It doesn't just stop at, secondary migraines to tinnitus. You can do secondaries almost to no end if it's causing or aggravating new conditions.
All right. Let's move on to the next thing, Cass.
Yeah. So, who had asked earlier? I think it was Tavarius had asked, is Meniere's disease related to tinnitus? And so that kind of takes us into one of our next points. Yes, you can have migraine headache secondary to it. You can have anxiety and depression secondary to things like tinnitus and hearing loss, but also vertigo, or more specifically, Meniere's disease. Those are rated separately or differently from the VA, but have very similar symptoms. And so that's just another one of those things that can be secondary to your tinnitus or hearing loss or related to it or that initial exposure you had during active duty. And they do rate that one between 0 to 30 for vertigo. It all depends on how often you're dealing with those bouts of dizziness. And then if it's accompanied with additional staggering, that might qualify for a little higher rating at that 30%.
Right, and with the actual Meniere's diagnosis, if the veteran is staggering, the VA can rate 100%, because some veterans, and I've worked with several, that it impacts their life to that extent where they can't hardly walk down the sidewalk without falling down, and that's just I couldn't even imagine that. But yeah, 100% rating for Meniere's. If it's that bad and impacting your life like that. Okay.
And I always encourage people, because I feel like things like headaches and dizziness, while it shouldn't be, a lot of us just deal with these things. And so you likely have been dealing with it for a long time, but maybe you've never talked to a doctor about it. You've just self-treated at home or said, nah, I don't know what that's from, but I'm not dying, get into the doctor, talk to them about these things. It's going to be your first step, is just getting them diagnosed before you can think about moving on to a secondary claim for that condition.
Man, and that's a great point, Cass. And, when people, and not just tinnitus and not just dizziness and not just headaches, but any condition, If we live with something for so long, we tend to normalize it, right? Well, that's just me, right? That's just the way it is. But it's not. Just because you've lived with it for 20 or 30 years doesn't make it normal. So that's the time that we need to take a step back, or speak with someone and say, no, no, that is not normal. That is not normal. So, um, yeah, great point. Gordon Frazier asked, is audio processing disorder considered a primary or secondary condition? So I'm not real familiar with that, Gordon. I can tell you that if it was diagnosed while you were on active duty, then it would certainly be a primary condition. Okay, and that's what defines a primary versus a secondary. So a primary was caused directly by your military service in some way. A secondary condition simply means that that condition was caused or aggravated by another service connected disability. Okay, so that's how we define primary and secondary. Unfortunately, I'm not that familiar with that condition. Actually, I'm not familiar at all with that condition. So if you were diagnosed on active duty, it would be a primary condition. All right.
Ray Van Meter, if I'm saying that right, says, is insomnia related to tinnitus? So with the VA, insomnia is not rated on its own as a condition, right? But it does kind of fell under that anxiety and depression umbrella or mental health umbrella. So if your tinnitus is affecting your sleep, and in turn, that's affecting how you can function, socially and occupationally throughout your day, that's going to be that secondary connection. So I would worry less about the specific diagnosis, but more so what are your symptoms and how are those related to your tinnitus, or how are your tinnitus making those things worse? And a big lack of sleep is going to be a key factor in that.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And insomnia is actually, while it's called sleep disturbances, is one of the 31 symptoms of mental health that the VA recognizes. So it's listed under sleep disturbances, which falls under a myriad of mental health diagnoses, right? So you may be dealing with other symptoms. So get with a get with your coach. We can point you in the right direction, get you evaluated if you haven't been evaluated, and get you on the path to service connection there. All right. So Hugh Avery Wheeler asked, how do we separate our tinnitus claim from our hearing loss claim? So those are separate conditions and they should be rated separately. If they have combined those, you can um, you could file a claim to have them separated. Typically, there's not any reason to do that, especially if your hearing is at a 0% level. Um, I don't know. That's really all I can say on that, Hugh. But feel free to jump on with us, and we'll take a look at your documents and see if it would be advantageous for you to make that case to try to separate those. You can jump there, vaclaims.help, speak with one of our business development representatives, and we'll get you on the path to a successful claim there.
And I can tell you, you'll learn a lot of information from just logging into your va.gov and looking at that page of disabilities. It'll show you exactly what you're rated for. And I have found a lot of times working with veterans that they feel that their tinnitus and their hearing loss either is merged or rated one or the other because that hearing loss is at 0. So just check that page out, see if they do already show a separate, but maybe the hearing loss just doesn't warrant a compensable rating at this time.
All right. April Bess, what if you have hearing loss, but it's not service connected? Okay, so remember, there's three things, like Cassie had mentioned earlier, the Kaluza triangle, right? You have to have an in-service event, you have to have a current diagnosis, and you have to have a medical nexus, which connects those first two things together. So without knowing your full history, obviously we wouldn't be able to answer that any further than that. But if you're missing any one of those three things, that is going to be the reason why it's not service connected. If you have filed for it and was denied, you can always file a supplemental claim. You get new and relevant evidence that maybe fills in those gaps that was there the first time you filed. File a supplemental claim and go at it again. So best of luck, April. If you want to, jump on with us and we'll help you through that process.
Michael Allen says USAF rated at 10% for tinnitus. He wants to file for sleep apnea as a secondary, and he's asking, do I need an excess letter? True or false? So that's a tough one, right? As a coach, sometimes we have to have those conversations of, hey, this may not be the best strategy. And sleep apnea secondary to tinnitus has been one of those ones that comes up a lot. And it's just not one that's often won, even if you were to have a nexus, right? So what I would encourage you to do is either sign up, chat with a coach, see what options you have available that could be secondary instead, or maybe you have a better pathway for your sleep apnea claim that can be looked into. But overall, to get a service connection for any condition connected to another, a nexus is going to be required. It's going to make it stronger. You know, you go to a CMP exam after you file a claim, and that CMP examiner can provide a nexus, but they don't always do that. And so that's why we have found best practices, get that medical opinion in your favor, get that nexus ahead of time. You're going to have a lot more success. So if you're not really sure, who do I get a nexus letter from? Sign up with VA Claims Insider. We'll chat with you and we'll get you headed in the right direction to a team of doctors that we know can really specialize in that process for you.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, Mark Lakehouse. I think this is kind of along that same line. No, I'm sorry. Let me back up. David Tacey. Is it possible to get a service direct sleep apnea claim with 2 buddy letters? No medical records from active duty, but totally diagnosed now, or would it be better to go secondary to tinnitus? So, yeah, just like Cassie was saying, as far as the secondary to tinnitus, that's a pretty tough one. I have never seen it won. Okay, just straight up, I've never seen a sleep apnea claim won secondary to tinnitus. I don't know how that connection would happen. As far as winning direct service connection with buddy letters, probably not. You know, and like Cassie said, sometimes we have to have those tough talks. We're here to make sure that we put you in the best position to win your claim, and we're going to be honest with you. If we don't see it happening for you, we're going to tell you. Not saying that you can't do it. We'll support you whatever you want to do, but you know, that's why you're coming on board with us to get our expert opinions. We've got a lot of history with this, and we do this day in and day out. We know what works and typically what doesn't work. So David, feel free to jump on a discovery call, talk with one of our BDRs, and we can go from there.
It can be a little discouraging sometimes, you know, when we have conditions that you are truly dealing with, you are diagnosed with, but there's just not a clear path to service connection. Ultimately, VA Claims Insider wants you to have success and
Right.
quickly, right? So we don't want you to go through a couple denials and then have one that does work out. We want you to go through and file a strong claim, all the evidence to support it, and then get that rating you deserve on the back end of it. No more frustrations about denials, right? So stay encouraged and see what you can do. Let us kind of dive into that with you. And then the next question you were going to dump into was Mark Lakehouse. So he says he was rated at 10% for tinnitus by the VA. He has a diagnosis for vertigo. He's just never claimed it as secondary to tinnitus, but that he's also been rated for migraines. So in your case, it sounds like it would be worth looking into a secondary claim. I'm not a doctor, but I know from experience that sometimes vertigo is secondary to either tinnitus and sometimes migraines. So what you're going to want to do is get a medical opinion, right? Actually have a doctor look over your diagnosis, look over what you're rated for, and then have the evidence to support that connection.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, D. Marshall J. Do you recommend using PACT Act presumptives and secondary conditions for the same issue? Well, that's a great question. So let's talk about presumptives. What is a presumptive? Okay, a presumptive is a condition that the VA has recognized as more likely than not caused by your military service. So in essence, what they're doing is they have approved the nexus for you already for that condition. Okay, they are presuming that your condition was caused by your military service. Okay, now if you're filing for a secondary, you're going to need that medical nexus, right? So it makes sense to file it as a presumptive condition if that applies in your particular case. Okay, great question. All right.
So some other questions coming in about other conditions. Some people, Big Time 911 says, what about bruxism TMJ? I'm not sure if you're asking if that's specifically secondary to tinnitus, but if you're dealing with that condition, getting a medical opinion of how it may be connected to what you're already service connected for, that's how you're going to figure out, is there a secondary pathway there?
And I'll just give an example because I want to make sure that people understand that a secondary condition doesn't necessarily mean there can't be multiple connections down the road. In other words, I'll give an example. Let's say that you are service connected for tinnitus, right? And that tinnitus has caused anxiety, and you get service connected for anxiety. And then that anxiety causes TMJ or TMD because you're clenching your teeth because of the anxiety. So that's a secondary to the anxiety, which is secondary to the tinnitus. So these things can all be connected, right? And that's part of why we do our strategy the way we do. We kind of lay the game plan out from beginning to end, um, and do things in a certain order in order to set you up for the best success that we can do, right? Great question. All right. Iran Smith, can TBI be secondary to migraines or PTSD? I was diagnosed with TBI, but was denied because they said it was not service connected. Okay, so TBI, traumatic brain injury, would not be secondary to migraines or PTSD. It could be primary to those conditions. In other words, TBI could cause um, migraines, for instance, right? Or the TBI could be connected to the PTSD, maybe the same incident, maybe a mortar attack, for instance. You could have a TBI and PTSD from the same incident. But I don't believe I don't see a connection of TBI secondary to migraines or PTSD. But that's where that whole strategy with your coach comes into play. We'll sort through that and make sure we get things in the right order and put you in the path to success. Great question, Aran. So again, discovery call there. And if you're ready to sign up, if you don't need that discovery call, if you're ready to get going today, jump on Cassie's link, theveterancoach.net, and she will get you taken care of.
Just so you guys have an understanding of kind of what it looks like once you do get signed up, you're going to get contacted from your coach or our assistants here fairly quickly, right? Whether that's via email or text message, you're going to get something saying, hey, thanks for joining. Here's what you can do next. So you can literally jump right into it and start getting into some of the materials we have available for you to review. And you can start uploading some of those records you want us to review, and we'll get together and talk about where to go from there. Let's see here. Arthur has a question. He says, I have a balance issue with tinnitus and rated 10% service connected. So it sounds like your balance issue could be related to those terms we were using earlier, right? Vertigo or Meniere syndrome. And so if you haven't yet talked to a doctor about it, that's likely going to be your next step. But there is a secondary pathway there. It's just about getting the medical evidence to support it at this point.
Okay. And Rusty, do you need a nexus letter I assume for secondary conditions to tinnitus, or is the medical notes from the VA okay? Well, it depends on what the medical notes say, Rusty. So the nexus, again, is a medical opinion. Let's just say that you're having headaches, right? And the VA notes in there says, patient is having headaches, likely due to his tinnitus. That would be a nexus. That's an example of a easy one sentence nexus, right? But without that statement there, you're going to need that nexus or a nexus letter. Okay. You need that medical opinion to make that connection. Remember, there's three things that you have to have: that in-service event, the current diagnosis, and that medical opinion connecting those two, i.e. the nexus.
And the main difference too between just a nexus statement and a full nexus letter is just, the information that's backing up that opinion. So there's one thing, here's my opinion. There's another to say, here's my opinion and how it's backed up by other medical literature. And so that'll be the difference in just a medical nexus statement versus a whole letter specific to your condition and how they're connected.
All right. And Justin asked, are there any other ways to get my medical records from in-service, not found in the blue button, or FOIA request? So Justin, and for everybody listening in, yeah, your medical records from your time in service will not be in your blue button report. And you do need to do a FOIA request on that. Typically it's to the St. Louis archives. And we can put something in the chat later as far as a link to connect. There's also Mill Connect for some vets that can get in there and get their things. And if it's a newer vet, you haven't been out that long, I believe that you can go into TRICARE and get your records from there. But we'll do a little bit more research on that, Justin, and we'll come back and put this back in the chat. Thanks for that question.
And I always encourage people with the FOIA request, the Freedom of Information Act request, give it time, right? Because it's going to take time. If I have vets just starting out in the program on our first call, if they haven't requested them yet, I'm like, hey, just get them requested. Because it seems like a long time, but it could take anywhere from 6 to 8 months to a year. But it's good to get it started. And then just be on top of that request. Make sure it's at least still in process every so months. And eventually you're going to get a disc in the mail. And you're going to be able to see what's on there. So just don't get discouraged. Don't say it's going to take a while. So just to the heck with it. Get it ordered at least. Just get it in motion. And your coach, when you get signed up, can tell you how to do that the best way.
So is it necessary for them to have their military service treatment records before they get started with us?
It's not. It's kind of specific, right? If there's certain conditions that you were dealing with during active duty and we need to see those records in order to form maybe a medical opinion to be formed for that connection, that might be. But I've found a lot of strategies where we get that on order, and then there's other things we can start working on. And it's okay to file one or two things you have everything for, get that successful claim win back, and then re-strategize once you have more medical evidence. That's usually the best strategy to do.
Yeah, excellent point. All right, folks, we are coming up to the top of the hour. I want to thank everybody for jumping in and sharing some time with us today. If you do have some other questions, we'd be happy to hang out here and answer those. Okay, we've got Zia working in the background, popping questions up for us. Just wanted to throw a shout out to her. Thank you for your help there. All right.
And if anybody kind of hopped in a little later on, we'll do just kind of a quick recap here before we end it out. Ultimately, we were just talking about tinnitus and hearing loss as initial claims, but then also a few things that you can file for as secondary to them if you're dealing with it. Ultimately, the big three that we see are going to be migraines or headaches, mental health, meaning like anxiety or depression, and then Meniere's or vertigo, that dizziness you might be dealing with. So we've kind of covered a whole slew of the ins and outs of what that looks like. But the key is if you're already service connected for hearing loss or for tinnitus, and then you have these new conditions that kind of fall under that list that we just said, either get diagnosed with it, or once you are, your next thing is to seek that medical nexus or that medical opinion between the two. And if you're like, that sounds like a lot, where do I start? That's when you can go ahead and just get signed up with us. Let us sort through it with you, and then make sure that you're feeling confident as you take that next step.
Excellent. So I'm going to swing back to Iran on his question about the TBI. He posted another question here with a little more detail. What I don't understand is that my PTSD was serviced with the Nexus letter, which also contained contain that I had TBI, but the VA will not connect it even though it happened in the same event over in Afghanistan. Okay, so here's the deal with TBI. It can actually manifest itself in a couple different ways, either through mental health symptoms, right? Or through physical symptoms. So if a TBI is causing headaches or dizziness or loss of taste or smell or anything like that, that would be rated separately from the PTSD. But if the symptoms manifest themselves as mental health symptoms, which sometimes TBI does, um, they won't give you a separate rating for that because you're rated under the PTSD. I hope that makes sense. You can't get rated for the same symptoms twice. That's called pyramiding. Okay. All right. But that's a great question.
Those are the kind of details too that we would love to get into with you. It's just hard to on a live setting like this. But if you get signed up and upload some of those records, that's what that one-on-one coaching call is going to allow us to do, is really dive into it and let you know, okay, here's what's going on, here's what you can do, or here's another option if that's not a good pathway. So don't hesitate to get signed up and just see, what we can suss out with you and for you.
All right. John Smitherman asked, "Are benefits paid retroactively?" In some circumstances, yes, John, they are. A lot of that is going to be based on a intent to file. So let's talk about that just real quick. If you're listening to my voice now and you don't have an intent to file active, get on va.gov, start the claim. You don't even have to talk about what you're filing for, but start the claim until you see the little pop-up that says your intent to file is good for a year, right? Or you could call the 800 number, 800-827-1000. Let the representative know that you want to file an intent to file. And what that does is locks in your date, right? For back pay purposes. So again, if you're hearing my voice and you don't have an active intent to file, make sure you get that done and make sure you renew that or refresh that every year. It's only good for 365 days. So make sure you refresh that. Okay. All right.
Scott Ferguson said, one more time, what are those three main things connected to tinnitus? And so I was going to have Z on the back end pop in a couple articles from our blog. We have what's called our VA Claims Insider blog, and we have a specific article that goes through tinnitus and hearing loss and some of those secondaries to it. So we've got that link there in the chat and up on the screen. So pop over there and just read through it. That way you don't have to worry about writing it down now, but you can go to the article and reference back to it.
All right. Jeffrey, I'm just going to call you Jeffrey because I don't want to butcher your last name, Jeffrey. So if I have multiple secondaries such as anxiety and TMJ, would they be separate claims? All right. So this is a great question. And this is we're going to dive into a little bit of strategy here, kind of the way we at VACI looks at this. You can take everything that you're dealing with and throw it at the wall and see what sticks. We have found that that is a terrible way to file your claims. Okay. We like to get granular with what's going on in your life, what conditions you're dealing with, and we stack those strategically to support the next claim. So you win this claim, that supports the next one, that supports the next one, and so on and so on. So that's the important thing of getting on with us, talking with an expert in this, and we'll make sure that we're not only in it for the short game, but the long game, right? If you deserve 100%, that's our goal for you. Okay, what you legally, morally, ethically, and medically deserve by law, that is the goal for us to get you.
Definitely. I'll take a moment to plug our main saying, if you served, you do deserve. So if you're on the fence, I talk with a lot of veterans that sign up and are just like, I don't know if I really should get the benefits, right? I didn't go through other things that people did during my military service, and don't let that discredit things that you are dealing with, right? If you're dealing with conditions now that are linked to your service, talk about it. Let's get it figured out if there's a pathway or strategy there to get it service connected, because you do deserve it.
Well, and with that, that's a great way to close out today. Cassie, man, it's been a pleasure. We've done a few of these together. Always look forward to spending this time with you here. Um, and to all the vets that spent time with us today, really appreciate you taking time out today and sitting in with us. It was great seeing everybody here in the chat, and look forward to working with you. Go to vaclaimsinsider.com, get on board with us, join the family, and we'll get you where you need to go. Cass, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I guess those same sentiments, right? I will be excited to hop on the phone with you, right? We tossed up my referral link a bunch of times, and I can't wait to just figure out what you're dealing with and see how we can get that service connected. So get signed up, get your questions answered. We're here to guide you.
Right on. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
See you next time.